So when I graduated high school, I was 17 years old. I enlisted in the army the next week just to get out of that town. The snow was red with blood. The German offensive tore through Belgium like a spear. The men holding the line knew what happened to those who surrendered. Malmédy had made that clear. In the middle of this chaos, one 19-year-old American private stayed behind on a narrow bridge. He was armed with little more than a bazooka and sheer defiance. He was not a commander. He was not famous. And he was not supposed to live through that day. They said tanks could not operate in this terrain, and the most you were going to get was a few infantrymen infiltrating. Well, it was about 400 the next morning. Here came German tanks, bumper to bumper. Yet somehow Francis Sherman Currey held the line. But why did German SS troops, known for their ruthlessness, hesitate when they encountered him? Here is why Francis Sherman Currey was the scariest soldier of World War II. A world on fire. December 1944. Europe was supposed to be winding down toward the end of the war. Allied forces had liberated France. They had pushed into Belgium. They were preparing to cross into Germany. But Adolf Hitler had one last move, a massive counteroffensive meant to split the Allied front, capture the port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace on German terms. It became known as the Battle of the Bulge, the largest and bloodiest battle fought by US forces in World War II. The Ardennes forest, usually quiet in winter, exploded with gunfire and artillery. Over 200,000 German troops, backed by 1,000 tanks and assault guns, slammed into unsuspecting American units. The weather worked in their favor. Fog and snow grounded Allied aircraft. It cut off the support troops had come to rely on. It was chaos. At the spearhead of this assault was the 1st SS Panzer Division. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were battle-hardened Waffen-SS troops, infamous for their brutality. In earlier campaigns in Russia, the men earned the nickname Blowtorch Battalion for their scorched earth tactics, burning villages and leaving nothing alive. They carried that same ruthless reputation into the Ardennes. On December 17, 1944, that brutality came into full view at the Malmédy massacre. A convoy of American soldiers from the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion surrendered to Panzer Division men near Bulge, Belgium. They expected captivity. Instead, they were herded into an open field and gunned down. 81 Americans were executed in cold blood. Survivors who played dead later crawled away and reported the atrocity. The massacre shocked the Allied command. For the troops on the ground, it was a chilling message. Surrendering was not an option. As the German advance pushed deeper into Belgium, American units were scattered, isolated, and low on supplies. Many were cut off entirely, facing tanks with little more than rifles and machine guns. Some abandoned their posts in desperation. Others dug in, knowing there would be no reinforcements coming in time. In this hellish landscape, where survival meant holding ground against overwhelming odds, one young soldier from New York prepared to make his stand. He was not a commander or a tank ace. He was a private, a replacement, a teenager who had barely seen combat. And in the days following Malmédy, he would do something that made German soldiers stop in their tracks. Something that would turn Francis Sherman Currey into one of the most unforgettable names of the war. Who was Francis Sherman Currey? Before the war turned him into a legend, Francis Sherman Currey was nearly invisible. He was not from a military family or a privileged background. He was born on June 29, 1925, in the quiet town of Loch Sheldrake, New York. His life changed early. At just 12 years old, he was orphaned and placed in a children's home. There was no roadmap to greatness for him. No early sign of the warrior he would become. When he enlisted in the US Army at 17, it was not out of glory-seeking. Like many young men of his generation, he wanted to serve. He trained hard. He learned the basics of infantry combat, rifle marksmanship, anti-tank weaponry, and small unit tactics. These were standard skills. What was not standard was how quickly he absorbed them. He retained technical details that most recruits struggled to master. By September 1944, Currey was sent to Europe as a replacement in the 30th Infantry Division, nicknamed Old Hickory. This division had already built a reputation as one of the hardest fighting units in the European theatre. They had stormed through Normandy. They had held off counterattacks in the Netherlands. Currey was not joining Green troops. He was stepping into the ranks of veterans who had seen some of the war's worst. For a 19-year-old who had never fired a shot in combat, this could have been intimidating. But Currey's fellow soldiers quickly noted his composure. He did not panic. He followed orders. He learned. Still, there was nothing about him that screamed hero. He was not tall or physically imposing. He was not an officer. He did not make speeches or draw attention to himself. To anyone looking at him in December 1944, he was just another replacement, another name on the roster. But that is what makes his story even more startling. In just a few months, this quiet young man would be thrust into one of the most chaotic moments of the war. He would not just hold his ground. He would change the course of a battle, and he would do it with a level of calm and aggression that no one saw coming. The boy who had grown up with nothing was about to take on the most feared soldiers in Europe. And at Malmédy, they would learn his name. The Malmédy assignment. By December 20th, 1944, the German offensive had carved deep into Allied lines. The Ardennes, once thought to be a quiet sector, was now a killing field. Town after town was falling to the relentless push of German armor and Waffen-SS infantry. Amid this chaos, Malmédy, a small Belgian town near key road junctions, became a crucial defensive point. Whoever controlled it would control the flow of reinforcements and supplies. If the Germans captured it, they would have a direct path to further disrupt the American defense. The 30th Infantry Division was tasked with holding this ground. One of its key positions was a bridge on the outskirts of Malmédy. It was not just any bridge. It was a vital crossing that, if taken, would give German armor a straight path to roll deeper into Allied territory. That is where Private Francis Sherman Currey was posted on the morning of December 21st, 1944. It was bitterly cold. Snow and ice coated the roads, slowing vehicle movement. But they also gave tanks and infantry natural cover in the fog. Visibility was low. Communication lines were stretched thin. The men stationed there knew that if a German force pushed across that bridge, they would not have much warning, and they would not have many options for retreat. To make matters worse, the Malmédy massacre had happened only days earlier. Word had spread fast. Captured Americans were not being spared. The men on that line understood one thing clearly. If the Germans came, they would be fighting to the last round. Currey was there with other infantrymen and supporting anti-tank crews. But the German advance had already been brutal. Anti-tank positions had been smashed. Units were withdrawing or being overrun. The enemy was not just coming. They were coming with armor and momentum. And then, without warning, it began. German artillery opened up, pounding the area around the bridge. The air filled with the scream of shells. Soldiers dove for foxholes and ditches. It was the classic prelude to an armored assault. Soften the defenses, then roll in the tanks. Currey did not panic. He watched through the smoke and debris. He spotted movement. A German tank emerging from the haze, edging its way toward the bridge. Then another. Most soldiers would have stayed in cover, waiting for orders. Currey did not. He grabbed his Browning automatic rifle and aimed at the tank commander visible in the turret. One clean burst. The German slumped out of sight. The tank rolled forward anyway. Currey knew this was only the beginning. The bridge would not hold by itself. And if no one acted, Malmédy would fall, the day everything broke. December 21st, 1944. The bridge at Malmédy was about to be swallowed whole. The artillery did not stop. It intensified. German shells ripped into American positions, throwing dirt, snow, and bodies into the air. It was not random fire. It was deliberate. A textbook prelude to armor rolling in for the kill. Through the haze, more tanks emerged. The first one Currey had engaged was just the spearhead. Behind it, at least 3 more tanks and supporting infantry were advancing. These were not scattered units. This was a coordinated SS push. Currey knew what that meant. If they took the bridge, the entire defensive sector would collapse. And in that moment, something clicked. He was not going to wait for reinforcements. There likely were none anyway. He was not going to hunker down and hope for survival. He was going to fight. Currey sprinted from his position through open ground under machine gun fire. He headed for a barn where a bazooka was stored. He was not alone. Another soldier helped him load it. But Currey was the one who stepped up to fire. He aimed at the tank and squeezed the trigger. The bazooka round slammed into the tank, hitting near the turret and disabling it. Smoke hissed from the impact as the vehicle rolled back, retreating out of the line of fire. One down. But that was not the end. 3 more tanks were coming. For most soldiers, that would have been the moment to retreat. But Currey was not like most soldiers. He spotted an abandoned American anti-tank position nearby. It was risky. German fire was raking the area. but Curry ran toward it, searching for anything he could use. He found it. Anti-tank grenades. Crawling and sprinting through bursts of enemy fire, he got close enough to lob the grenades at the advancing tanks. With the first grenade, he disabled one tank. With the second, he forced another tank to pull back. And by the third, a tank was abandoned entirely by its crew. In a matter of minutes, one lone private had halted an armored advance meant to crush an entire defensive position. And still, Curry was not done. While he was fighting the tanks, he spotted 5 wounded American soldiers stranded near a disabled half-track. They were pinned by machine gun fire, unable to move. Without hesitation, Curry crawled across the road under enemy fire, dragging each man to safety. Once they were clear, Curry returned, not to retreat, but to fight. He climbed onto the wrecked half-track. He commandeered its mounted .50 caliber machine gun. He laid down a relentless stream of fire, forcing German infantry to scatter. By the time the smoke cleared, the Germans had been pushed back. The bridge was still in American hands, and Francis Sherman Currey was still standing. But the battle for Malmédy was not over. The Germans would come back, and the quiet 19-year-old from New York was not finished showing them just how dangerous one soldier could be. The impossible stand. Francis Sherman Currey should have been dead. By every calculation, a lone private with a Browning, a bazooka, and a handful of grenades should not have been able to stand against a coordinated Waffen-SS armored assault. Yet, for reasons that would puzzle even the enemy, he did. The bridge was still contested. The Germans were not retreating completely. They were regrouping. Infantry dug in, taking up firing positions. Tanks edged cautiously, avoiding the killing ground where Curry had wrecked their advance. But Curry was not just holding the line. He was dictating the fight. After clearing the bridge with anti-tank grenades, he repositioned himself. He crawled back toward the disabled half-track where he had mounted the .50 caliber machine gun. With the weapon stabilized, Curry unleashed controlled bursts at German infantry. He pinned them down. He cut off their support for the remaining tanks. It was not wild shooting. It was precise, deliberate suppression. The Germans responded with heavy fire. Bullets chewed into the wreckage around him. Mortar rounds landed close enough to rattle his teeth. Any normal soldier would have abandoned that position. Curry stayed. And when the machine gun overheated and jammed, he did not stop. He switched to his Browning automatic rifle. He poured fire into German positions until they were forced to withdraw deeper into cover. But the SS were not done. They had tanks still capable of pushing through, and if they coordinated one more strong assault, the bridge and the men behind it would fall. Curry made sure that did not happen. Moving with an almost mechanical calm, he scavenged Panzerfausts, German single-shot anti-tank weapons left behind by retreating infantry. Using the enemy's own weapons, he stalked the field and fired at the remaining armor with unnerving precision. The effect was devastating. Crews abandoned their tanks rather than risk being blown apart. The advance sputtered and died. By this point, Curry had done more than hold his ground. He had single-handedly broken the momentum of an SS offensive, a feat that would normally require a coordinated squad or an anti-tank team. And he did it under constant fire at just 19 years old. When the shooting finally stopped, the bridge was still in American hands. The 5 wounded men Curry had rescued were alive, and the German assault had been blunted. It was over, at least for now. For his actions that day, Curry was later recommended for and awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration the United States can bestow. But even medals cannot fully capture what happened at Malmédy. This was not simply one soldier doing his duty. This was one soldier redefining what was possible on a battlefield. And the truth of why the Germans hesitated, why they pulled back instead of overwhelming him, would not become clear until much later. A hero nobody saw coming. When the smoke finally cleared, the bridge at Malmédy was still in American hands. German armor had retreated. The wounded men Curry had dragged to safety were alive. And somehow, the quiet, wiry private who had manned that position was still standing. To the men who witnessed it, the scale of what Curry had done was hard to comprehend. He had acted alone with no orders, improvising in real time. He had faced Waffen-SS troops, men infamous for their ruthlessness, and forced them back. It was not luck. It was not chance. It was deliberate, calculated action that had stopped a German advance dead in its tracks. In the immediate days following the battle, Curry's story spread through his unit. He was not a loud or boastful man, but the men around him knew what they had seen. Word reached his commanders quickly. By March 1945, his company commander had formally recommended him for the Medal of Honor, citing his extraordinary heroism and decisive action in the face of overwhelming odds. On July 27, 1945, near Rambervillers, France, Currey was presented the Medal of Honor by Major General Leland Hobbs, commander of the 30th Infantry Division. The official ceremony followed in August after the fall of Berlin. But the honors did not stop there. In addition to the Medal of Honor, Currey received the Silver Star, Bronze Star, 3 Purple Hearts, and Belgium's Order of Leopold. His own division commander was not the only one impressed. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, reportedly told Currey that his actions at Malmédy had shortened the war by 6 weeks, a staggering assessment of the impact one soldier could have on the battlefield. Yet, despite the accolades, Francis Sherman Currey did not act like a war hero. He did not seek the spotlight. After the war, he joined the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Albany, working quietly as a counselor to other veterans. He later ran a landscaping business and eventually worked in hotel convention planning in Myrtle Beach. He never bragged. He rarely spoke about what happened. To the world, he was a decorated soldier. But to those who faced him at Malmédy, he was something far more unsettling. The Waffen-SS who met him on that bridge did not just lose tanks or men. They lost their nerve. But why? Why did hardened German soldiers hesitate against a single 19-year-old private? The answer would reveal why Francis Sherman Currey was not just brave. He was terrifying. Why Francis Sherman Currey was the scariest soldier of World War II. So why did Waffen-SS tank crews, elite battle-hardened soldiers, hesitate? Why did they pull back from one bridge held by a single 19-year-old private? Because Francis Sherman Currey did not fight like one man. On that day at Malmédy, he created the illusion of a larger force. The rapid, precise way he moved, switching positions, scavenging weapons, and striking from unexpected angles, made the enemy believe they were walking into a coordinated ambush. They were not. It was just Currey. But in war, perception can be more powerful than reality. Most infantrymen stayed pinned down under tank and machine gun fire. Currey did the opposite. He ran at the enemy. He fired bazookas at close range. He used captured Panzerfausts, weapons designed for German hands, and turned them against their owners. This was not reckless courage. It was psychological warfare. To the Germans, his actions did not make sense. And soldiers fear what they cannot predict. That day, he fought like an entire unit. Currey's ability to transition between roles, anti-tank specialist, machine gunner, medic rescuing wounded men, created confusion. The SS did not know how many Americans they were really facing. Was this a squad? A platoon? Reinforcements? They could not tell. That uncertainty slowed their advance and forced them to retreat. While panic was spreading among the Germans, Currey was aggressive but calm. In a firefight where any wrong move meant instant death, he acted with surgical precision. That kind of composure under fire is unnerving to any opponent. It makes them wonder, what does he know that we do not? Suddenly, the enemy was the one feeling scared. German SS troops thrived on intimidation. Massacres like Malmédy were designed to terrorize their foes. But at that bridge, they were on the receiving end. Currey's aggression, his refusal to retreat, and his effectiveness with improvised weapons made them hesitate. In combat, hesitation is fatal. This combination, adaptability, fearlessness, and psychological manipulation, made Francis Sherman Currey terrifying to face. He was not a berserker blindly charging tanks. He was a hunter, calmly dismantling one of the deadliest fighting forces of the war, piece by piece. That is what separates him from other heroes of World War II. He did not just survive the impossible. He made the enemy believe they were outmatched. That is why Francis Sherman Currey was not merely brave. He was the scariest soldier of World War II, a lone private who shattered the confidence of an elite SS division and left them wondering what exactly they had just faced. Legacy of a ghost. When Francis Sherman Currey left the battlefield, he did not bring the war with him. Unlike many Medal of Honor recipients who became public figures, Currey chose a quieter path. After leaving active duty in 1946, he dedicated his life to helping others. There were no speaking tours, no memoirs, no fanfare. Yet his legend only grew. The men who had been there knew what they saw. A one-man stand that saved lives and stalled a German advance. For them, Currey was not just another soldier. He was the reason they made it home. His recognition extended beyond medals. In addition to the Medal of Honor, Silver Star, Bronze Star, 3 Purple Hearts, and the Order of Leopold from Belgium, Currey's story became part of military study programs, showing future soldiers how adaptability and psychological dominance can change the course of a battle. He became the first Medal of Honor recipient to be immortalized as a G.I. Joe action figure, introducing his story to younger generations who might otherwise never learn his name. His real-life actions were also adapted into scenarios for video games like Medal of Honor, turning his battlefield improvisation into teachable moments of tactical brilliance. But Currey himself never saw any of it as extraordinary. In his mind, he was just doing his job, protecting his fellow soldiers, holding his ground. He passed away on October 8, 2019, at the age of 94. The quiet, unassuming man who had once single-handedly stopped a Waffen-SS advance died peacefully in New York, far from the frozen bridge where his legend was born. His story is more than a tale of wartime heroism. It is a reminder of what makes a soldier truly terrifying to his enemies. It is not rage. It is not brutality. It is the ability to remain calm, adapt under pressure, and turn fear back on those who would wield it. On that day in Malmédy, Francis Sherman Currey became something the Germans could not understand, a lone ghost who fought like an entire army. And that is why his name still carries weight. Not because he wanted to be remembered, but because no one who faced him could ever forget. Do you think a single soldier like Francis Sherman Currey could have this kind of impact in modern warfare today? Or was he a product of a different kind of war? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.